It's time to get sexy, so watch Secular Sexuality live Thursdays at 7 p.m. Central. Visit tiny.cc/YTSS and call into the show at 512-991-9242 or connect to the show online at tiny.cc/callsex.
Such hype.
I know, I love it. Every single week, that hype just really gets me raging. Hello, everybody. This is another episode of Talk Heathen. My name is Johnny P. Angel. It is September 5th, 2021. It's season 5, episode 36. And I am here today with the incomparable, fabulous, wonderful, and in all other ways, good Christy Powell. How are you doing today, sir?
Hey, howdy, hey. I'm in great shape. I got to start off the weekend by taking my kiddo to see a Marvel movie. I got to wrap up last night watching a bunch of college football. So now it's a Sunday afternoon. I'm shot out of a cannon.
Yeah. Oh, goodness gracious. Well, I'm glad to hear that. That sounds great. What Marvel movie did you see?
Shang-Chi.
Oh, yes, I've been hearing that that's pretty good. Did you enjoy it?
Surprisingly good. I mean, I'm a little bit of a fanboy. Plus,
Mhm.
when you've got a 13-year-old, like, there's not just a whole lot of things that we can
Yeah,
actually do together. So yeah, it's a good time. Good time.
that makes sense. Well, that's great. I've been looking forward to it. I'm going to go check it out myself whenever the opportunity makes it happen. Well, let's get to a little bit more show stuff.
Uh huh.
Talk Heathen is a product of the Atheist Community of Austin, a 501c3 organization dedicated to the promotion of positive atheist culture and the separation of religion and government. There are a number of ways you can support the ACA, and we will get to those right after we take our first call. And so I'm going to put on the line right now. I want to talk to Marlon from the Philippines, who would like to talk to us today about a miracle of his pastor's dog coming back to life after the church prayed for it to happen. You are on the show with Christy and Johnny. Marlon, tell us a bit more about that, would you?
How are you guys?
Great. How are
Do you
you?
believe in the resurrection?
I believe in anything that you can demonstrate to be true.
Right. Tell us about this
Well,
pooch coming back to the land of the living.
well, it was lunchtime, and while everyone just was hanging around, the pastor's dog just collapsed, and it was confirmed that his oxygen has been cut off.
Hmm.
Now,
It was
everyone was in
confirmed.
a panic.
Marlon, let me pause you there. It was confirmed that the dog's oxygen was cut off. What do you mean by that?
He died.
Okay,
He
that's
wasn't
that's different from the
breathing.
oxygen was cut off, isn't it? I was at a chicken place, and I got a piece. I was yapping while I was eating chicken, and I could not get oxygen into my lungs, but I did not die. So you said the oxygen was cut off. Which was it?
Yes.
Which
His
is it?
oxygen was cut off.
Okay, the oxygen was cut off, which is not death, because I'm still alive, or am I?
Well, and I know it seems like we're picking at it, but you're
Yeah,
starting off on a really huge claim. So when you
yeah.
say it was confirmed, I want to understand what that phrase means too. I mean, did a medical professional examine the vital signs, or did somebody say, yeah, unfortunately, this dog has passed?
My pastor's brother is a licensed doctor. That's why he was able to examine the dog.
Okay.
Oh,
And
so the pastor.
like we were going to bury the dog right after
Okay.
that.
So the
We're going to
pastor.
give it a shot.
So real quick,
Yes.
the pastor was also a doctor. So the pastor, the person who is your spiritual leader, is the person who claimed that the dog was dead. Yes.
His, his brother.
Oh, okay. His brother.
Yes.
All right. Mhm. Were you there for that?
Yes, I was invited at the Baptist church for lunch.
So you
And
were
I
in.
couldn't let my friend down. That's why I joined him, you know.
Okay. It says here, correct me if I'm wrong, but you are a theist. So do you actually believe that the dog was actually dead? Yes?
Yes, because it
Because
wasn't
why?
moving. The dog wasn't moving.
Okay.
He was out cold.
Hmm. Okay. And how long was the dog out cold? A couple of days or what?
About less than an hour.
Okay.
I mean,
Here in
I
the
follow
Philippines, we give
logic,
it
right?
24
The
hours
animal
before
appears to be
burial.
dead, you pray, and the animal appears to be alive, and hallelujah, a miracle has
Hmm.
occurred. Like it,
Yeah.
it makes a certain kind of sense. And I know it can seem like we are just, trying to poke holes in everything, but these little details actually matter incredibly because you have found yourself believing in something that doesn't really seem to be very common, seems to be incredibly contrary to nature. So, whether we say that it was a miracle or a misunderstanding really does depend on what it is that actually happened. Yeah.
Like I'm not lying, guys. I saw this happen in real time,
I believe your
right
sincerity.
in
I'm
front
not
of me.
challenging that you saw what you saw or that you believe what you believe.
My
Let me ask
pastor's
you.
dog suggested that everyone prayed so that he could get a connection to the other side. And he said God has sent him a message that he would release a dove.
So the
If that
dog, the
dove
dog,
comes,
the dog received a message, or the pastor
no,
said
a
that they received a
bird,
message.
he would release a white dove, a a bird, a kind of bird, a dove. He would
Who
release
said
it.
who relayed the message? Who relayed the message?
My pastor's brother,
Okay,
we
so
call
the
him
pastor's
uncle.
uncle. Hmm. How about sick people? How about sick people in your in your church, or dying, dead children, dead old folks, injured people? How about amputees? What other miracles have
There,
happened at your church?
there have been testimonies of our church members getting healed within a week.
Okay, of what?
Even
Testimonies of
a
being healed of what? Are we talking like I have a headache and then I prayed for it to go away? Are we talking about lost limbs? Are we talking about cancer? Are we talking about uh, burns? What kind of testimonies do you have from your church of prayer healings, faith healings?
from diseases like problems in the liver, in the
Okay,
lungs, in the heart.
right. Are
I,
these
I
people?
don't.
Go
Well,
ahead. Go
if
ahead,
I can
Christine.
jump in, yeah, Marlon, I
Yeah.
don't doubt what you're saying in the sense that I believe that you saw what you saw. I believe that you believe what you believed. But I also know
They
that if
relay the
there was
message
a
from the
church in the
other
Philippines
side.
or anywhere else that was reliably and predictably able to heal major ailments, that we would be able to learn about that from more than just a random caller on the internet.
Yeah.
If these things are going on, where are the journalists? Like, where are the medical professionals? Who is documenting and exploring these things so that we don't just have to take your word for it, Marlon? If
Hmm.
these things are true, if they're happening not just once, but
Been
repeatedly and reliably, then why is there not more interest from the scientific community, from the journalistic community, from folks that would be able to take this true thing that you're suggesting to me and evidence it to the world so that they might know that, Jesus is Lord, or that your pastor is magic, or whatever else might be
Hmm.
true?
Yeah. What are your thoughts on that?
it's it's been recorded in the news and on the daily newspaper, but you guys wouldn't understand it because it's Tagalog and
Ah, got it. Yeah.
broadcasted in local languages.
Well, but there are apps for translating that, Marlon. Why don't you send us the links? I'm curious. I'd like to read more about this. I know there's umpteen examples of faith healers who, under certain circumstances, have been able to convince people that they can heal others through the power of uh, prayer. Why don't you send to
But
TV at
I get
atheist
my information.
I'm going to
Sorry.
mute you real quick here. I'm sorry there, Marlon. I'm not being mean, but I want to make sure you hear this. TV, that's TV at atheist community.org. Go ahead and send links. And we have people in the community that might be able to translate for us if the apps don't. But so you wanted to say something. I'm going to unmute you now. Go ahead.
I just want to say that I get my information from the daily newspaper, from the local
Mhm.
newspaper. That's why I know that this is a legit event. This really happened.
I mean, things that
This
are in
is the same
newspapers and things that
pastor that
are
lights
legit
his
events
hands
that
on
actually
fire.
happened have some overlap, but
Yeah.
let's not get too carried away.
Yeah, and Marlon, let me ask you this. Why has not your parish become the center of a healing wave? Why do not folks come to your particular parish? Is it because the newspaper articles are not written in all the languages of the world? And if only we could have it. It sounds like you speak English. Would you be willing to translate that to English and then contact newspapers and websites throughout the world sharing the good news of the healing pastor and the power of prayer of your church, and maybe people who have maybe injured in war or uh, you know other diseases maybe could come to your
Yeah,
church if they can afford it, and then they can grow new limbs and they can be cured of their cancer and their other diseases, as you talked about.
Yeah,
Would
we're
you be willing
not
to do that?
journalists here. We are, volunteer
well,
talk show hosts
region-wise,
in
our
America.
church is
But if this is
recognized.
true, let's get this information out. I mean, put it in front of people who can examine it. If this
Yeah,
is your message, let's do something about it, right?
yeah. The
Well,
proof
I
is
can
in.
send you guys a link, but I get my information from the newspaper.
Oh, sure. And
I
there's a
get
lot of
it in.
newspapers out there, Marlon. There's a lot of newspapers out there that will publish anything to get people to read them. I'm not convinced that your parish prayed a dog back to life. Um, I'm not saying it's impossible, but I'm just not convinced. And I don't think very many people are. I believe that you are telling us that you saw it. I don't know. I don't have a host of examples of what happened to that poor dog. It might have choked on a bone or something, or it may have fallen into a coma, or it was trained to lay still, or it had some sort of a medical incident and it blacked out. I don't know. I'm not a dog expert, but I'm not convinced, and your testimony isn't enough. So if you have something, and if the newspaper does a good job of reporting it, go ahead and send that article to us at TV at atheist-community.org. We'll take a look at it, and we will talk about it in the future. I don't think I really have anything else. Christy, you want to move on?
No, yeah, let's take the next one.
Yeah, thanks for your call,
Thank
Marlon.
you, guys.
Good luck. I
Thank
hope that you
you.
don't I hope you don't rely upon the power of the prayer of your parish in order to cure you from whatever ailments might happen to you in the future. Go to the doctor if you can afford one. Please do.
Okay.
All right, you take care. All right. I think we ought to take a call from Stephen in Washington. Stephen, you are on the show Talk Heathen with Christy Powell and Johnny P. And it says here that you want to ask the hosts perspectives on Christian nationalism in the US of A. Is that right?
That is correct, sir.
Christy, you got any thoughts on Christian nationalism? Because I do.
Yeah, too many. I definitely, Stephen, if you have any particular questions, please let me know. But I guess I'll just say, generally speaking, that this is a week where we're in particular feeling it. Like here in Texas on the 1st, we had 666 new laws go into effect, and so many of those laws are really bent by a Christian nationalist faction, and so many of them are incredibly devastating. Honestly, I'm at a moment myself where I'm just still trying to wrap my head around it and get comfortable even talking about some of these issues. So I guess I'll say, in short, my perspective on Christian nationalism is that it has no place in a pluralistic society, in a just society. And I am a little bit like hurt and overwhelmed, as I know so many people are.
Yep.
Sure.
Thoughts on that?
If you don't mind me hopping in here, my main thing is I'm part of I called the atheist experience last week or the week before that, and my main issue is I've gone looking into the black hole of information on Christian nationalism and dominionism and the number of different churches, specifically in my area, that promote these ideas and try to instill them in my local government is really starting to give me a lot of anxiety and fear and a lot of anger that I just don't know what to do with. And I'm just trying to get kind of a logic check here.
Yeah.
Am I right to be that concerned? And what do I do with all this? Like, I know enough now that I feel like I have to do something, but I don't know where to put it.
Yeah,
You're
we're
right
well past the hypothetical of what it could be. We're already seeing that it is. But Johnny, please.
No, Christy, I do want to, yeah, exactly. You were right to be concerned, Stephen. I read a couple of books on this recently and you may have already read them. One of them is Taking America Back for God. Very interesting and depressing book. It's by Andrew Whitehead and Samuel L. Perry, talking about Christian nationalism in the United States. Very interesting analysis of it. Um, Looking at a lot of statistical analysis of who these folks are, what are they talking about. One of the things that I thought was interesting in there was it's not exactly Christian doctrine made law. It's more of an ideology into itself. And some of the statistics, at least as I read it, and if I'm reading it wrong, I'm sure the chat will correct me. But Christians who tend to go to church more frequently, who tend to have more biblical literacy, tend to have um, less supportive views of Christian nationalism, which is
That resonates to me.
yeah, which is I think wonderful. I think we have a lot of allies uh, inside and outside of Christianity, and it sounds like you would be an ally to the non-believing community or the non-Christian nationalist community with atheists, other folks who don't want to see these laws, who don't want to see folks break down that barrier, the separation of church and state, enforce almost Christian Sharia. Was it the Texas? They call it the Texas Taliban. What was the phrase?
Yeah, that line's getting a lot of
Yeah,
play right now. I mean, Stephen, I don't share your beliefs, but
right.
do you feel at all as if your belief system, your culture is being hijacked by, I don't know, corrupt politicians or businessmen or anything else? Does that experience describe or resonate with what you're going through?
A great question.
Yeah, absolutely. The big thing that I found very frustrating in this is that they use the Bible and specifically Jesus as like the center of their their legal system that they're trying to impose on everyone. When a lot of what Jesus taught has nothing to do with any of the laws that they're trying to implement. One of the guys that I've specifically been really frustrated with is this pastor called Doug Wilson. He runs a Calvinist church kind of in my local area, and this guy's a real piece of work. Like, obviously, Calvinists and Episcopalians would have some disagreements regardless of every person's individual perspective. But him specifically, some of the things that he says and does promoting this kingdom of God, as he puts it, just disturb me to my core. Like promoting
Just how
the
normalized
subjugation of
that
women
language
as
is.
a
Sorry, we got a little bit of crosstalk going on there. No, I get it. Yeah, that
all good.
it chills you to your core, and no one's at fault here. Just there's a delay. That it just happens. But yeah, it is frightening because it doesn't ring. And I grew up Catholic, but it doesn't mean that that's the only Christian experience that's out there. And I know that other Christians had much different, other Catholics had much different experiences than I did growing up, based upon where they were in the world and the time that they were growing up. But it doesn't sound like any Christianity that I've ever encountered in my own personal experiences in life. Certainly, the message of Jesus, I never grew up with the impression that Jesus was this violent dude. I mean, I know he trashed some tables in the temple on one occasion, but uh, there's not a lot of language in there about bearing swords or trebuchets or whatever catapults and storming the Senate, taking over, forcing everyone to be Christian. It did always seem that there was at least lip service to a message of love. Although you look closely, and there are some issues with. I did not come to bring peace, but a sword. But it still doesn't sound like let's force everyone to believe this. Let's take over and I don't know. I would
Yeah.
encourage you to read that book. I know also The Founding Myth covers a bit of it by Andrew Seidel. I've tutored that a few times lately, a few different shows, but there's a lot of analysis taking place. What's frightening to me, I also read a book recently called Anatomy of Fascism, and I can't remember who wrote that, but the Anatomy of Fascism just talks about some of the tools that fascistic and fascist light uh, uh, folks will use, and typically they will take on a myth of the past that either existed in some form or didn't exist at all, and they will use that. They will spin that. They'll weave that into an entire worldview to try to inspire and mobilize folks to take action. Um, we saw this in Germany. We saw this in Italy. We see this all around the world, where folks will take an ideology like that, take a myth, take a history, real or mythologized, to try to mobilize people to taking action. And I think the only way to stop that from happening is to confront it rhetorically and sometimes, you know, physically, not necessarily attacking people, but to be there in those places where those people are acting, record, share that information, speak out, and be involved in decision making, whether that's on the national level, the local level, or in your family environment, friends and family environment. Have those conversations, because those ideas breed. They're starting to not just breed in the dark, but they do. But they're spreading and they're becoming acceptable, and we can't let that happen, because it won't be good for the atheists, and it certainly won't be good for folks like you who want to promote. I'm assuming you want to promote peace and love in the world. Do you?
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
so. I don't know how familiar you are with the Episcopal Church, but it's specifically my local church is a
Yeah.
very liberal, very peaceful group of people. We don't usually get involved in political issues like this, but right now there are multiple school board positions and city council positions and other local government positions that have been taken over by parishioners in these groups that are trying to push through a lot of this Christian nationalist, like very clearly not secular based laws. And
Right.
it's funny that you mentioned all these books. I read Mr. Seidel's book, and I thought it was very enlightening. The book that really sent me down this whole rabbit hole in the first place was a book called The Power Worshippers.
Ooh.
I would highly recommend that one. Reading through it, one of my atheist friends recommended it to me, and reading through it, as I continued, it was like, wow, this really sounds a lot like, this Doug Wilson guy. And sure enough, I go looking into it, and that's exactly what's going on. So
That was written
I
by.
think that we are definitely on the same page as far as like this is a thing. This is something to be worried about. I'm justified in having the feelings that I do.
Yeah.
So then, as far as where to put all this stress and all this emotion, you would recommend just like trying to get as much information as possible, reaching out to, legal agencies and people that can kind of approach this more from a enforcing secular government side instead of trying to convince these people that they're doing something wrong. Because I haven't
No,
had
I
any luck on that front.
I didn't say that. Yeah, if that's what you're thinking, I'm saying that's not what I'm saying. No, I think you haven't had any luck in that. That was going to be a question of mine. What has been the response from these Christian nationalist folks in your community? What do they say when you push back, and how do you push back? What's your approach? I want to know.
So usually, there. So in this community, there are, I think, the number that I calculated out is that there are like for every one church, you could have a group of like 20 people, and that would be the entire population of the town. You could have 20 people in each church, and that's how many churches we have. Like it is just religion is very pervasive throughout our town.
Sure.
And there are consortiums that we get together, and there are representatives from each of the churches that get together and have a cup of coffee, or we'll go to different local events and we'll have like booths representing each one of our churches. And there's a lot of crosstalk at these events. And what I try to do is I try to build up as much of a coalition of these people that I can to be like, look, any laws that we try to push forward that represent one of our churches more than the other one gives the power to subjugate all of us. None of us can have a distinct control over our local government because that's never going to be a stable solution. All of these laws that they're implementing give the governmental power to turn that power against themselves. And that's kind of the way that I've been approaching it. But these people are so hell-bent and convinced that the end times are going to be coming within the millennia. And
let's go ahead and just scorch the earth and
government.
destroy all of our relationships and things because, it's time to just give up. Get in now. I appreciate everything you're saying, Stephen.
It's not a scorched earth policy. It's not a scorched earth policy. They believe that bringing about the kingdom of God by taking over the government will bring about the end of the earth. That's their motivation. They're trying to get into these government offices so that they can bring about the end of days. And it's so paranoid and so fearful that these people are motivated by that emotion and there's
Yeah.
no talking about it.
Yeah. It's a kind of a death cult, isn't it? Because they're trying to end the world. Um,
Absolutely.
that's frightening. Yeah, it is. And I don't know what the answer is. I think you're doing the right thing. You're trying to build a consensus. I would hope that as that cooler heads will prevail over time. We're existing in this world of conspiracy theories, of alternative facts, of these little cabal groups of folks who are trying to bring about a different way of living, and who the QAnon thing, folks who the fact that they are extreme is it's rewarding itself. I've talked about this before. Red pill, blue pill, the conspiracy theories that are killing us. Another book that I enjoyed recently, talking about this feedback loop. The more extreme you are, the more radical your views are, the more you exist in that world. The folks that are in there with you, they reward you with positive feelings. It's like the social media effect where you get the likes, you get the endorphins, you get all that stuff. And I think the only way to do that is to be calm and patient when talking to those folks. But it is a frightening thing to do. But the only thing that will definitely make things worse is to do nothing. And I think what you're trying to do is the smart thing. You're trying to build a consensus. You're trying to listen. You're trying to be patient. Those people might not listen to you, but the person you're speaking to might be too hardened at this point. But speaking to others around them, they're not alone. Uh, I do not see how this way of thinking can function, can spread, and can actually take over if people are behaving rationally and are having calm, rational thoughts and don't give them an inch. You see on these shows sometimes we have people with some rather outlandish positions. You don't have to get angry to say no. I don't accept that. I'm sorry. No, you're going to have to prove to me that this is a legitimate this is a legitimate future for us. I don't want it.
Sure.
And prove to me.
Sure.
But be there and be exemplify the behavior you want to see in others, and build a consensus, and try not to push those folks out. Always try to maintain that dialogue. I got a friend right now whose mother has gone down this type of hole, and it becomes very draining. You what you seem to want to do is just, I don't want to talk to them right now. I don't want to have this conversation. And maybe you can't have that conversation every time you talk to them. And maybe the comfortable thing is to go away and just find people who aren't batty when it comes to these things. But I think what you're doing is important, and to solidify your community, to make sure that there's a dialogue of a healthier form of engagement with the society we live in. I don't know if you have any further thoughts and things develop. You gave me a book to read. I gave you a couple books to read. Maybe you've read them already. I do appreciate the work that you're doing. Of course, we don't have to agree on the metaphysics of everything to understand that we do share this world, and we don't want to see it burning around us. So, last thoughts, Christy? You got any parting?
No, just to say thank you for working to make the world a better place.
Yeah.
You mentioned not wanting to let one particular church dominate the other churches, and let me maybe substitute that for letting right dominate over wrong. And we can disagree about some of the nuances of right and wrong, but if you are putting the idea of fairness and justice and equality ahead of everything else, we're all gonna be pulling in the same direction.
Yeah. All right. With that, Stephen, you take care. All right. And, call back. Let us know if you've had any successes, and if there's anything that does work to bring some of those folks back over into the rational realm. Please come and share it, because everyone's experiencing this right now, and they're going to want to know. Okay. All right. I'd love to take Le Chef in Canada.
Yeah,
And
let's
so
do
we
it.
shall.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Chef, you're on. Yeah, you're on the air with Christy and Johnny. What you got? You says here
Perfect.
that there is historical evidence for God. And Le Chef, I'm going to warn you, there's a little bit of a delay, so we're not going to talk over each other. Let's all three of us be cognizant of that. Okay.
No problem.
What you got?
I've been proposing this argument and I have yet to be refuted. So I'm going to see if you guys do a better job than the last a couple of atheists. I have two infallible arguments or propositions on which my case is built upon. The first one is the Hebrews claim that their God makes exclusive claims to the 7-day cycle. And the second one is the Hebrews claims that their God prophesied or predicted the universal application of the 7-day cycle as a sign of his authority over all nations. By that, Jesus Christ has submitted all nations. Since we can see the law of cause and effect, he predicted it, and the effect of the 7-day cycle being universal is a demonstration of his power. So how would you engage with that?
Wait, where is there a universal, naturalistic, demonstrable 7-day cycle?
Yeah.
I mean, what's the difference between a Saturday and a Sunday and a second Sunday versus just going to Monday? Like, aren't those just labels that we ascribe?
You're talking about the names of the days, which are not universal. I could care less about that. I'm talking about counting to 7 and doing it all over again. That is what I'm talking about. So a 7-day week is
right.
Opposition.
Not every person for the history of
authorship.
humanity has had a 7-day cycle. And even if they did, like, there's nothing naturalistic about that. Those are just words that we use, right?
Yeah. Yeah, Le Chef.
First of all, I want to.
Le Chef. Hold on. Did you call some other shows about this too? This isn't the first time you've tried this out, or was that somebody else?
Yes, it is. I've called a couple of times.
That's a terrible argument.
Well, you're misrepresenting my argument because you're saying it's a naturalistic argument. And
well, I just said it was terrible. I just said it was terrible. I didn't misrepresent anything. I think that's a pretty fair representation. So the argument is that the argument. Remember what I said? There was some delay, so I'm just going to go ahead and mute you. But you're not off the line, and I'm just so that we can avoid the background noise. You might be moving yourself in your seat like I'm doing right now. But my thoughts on this are okay. There's a 7-day cycle that's described in the Bible. And many countries of the world in the 21st century use a 7-day cycle, whether it's Sunday to Saturday and repeat, or some other word. Therefore, all the other claims in the Bible are real too. Something like that. Oh, looks like we lost him.
Looks like you pissed him off.
Well, I was just asking for clarification. Christy, let's continue the conversation on this. So basically, the folks who had a 7-day cycle to their calendar, they prevailed economically and politically in the distribution of their 7-day week, if you wish, and that worked pretty well. I know that there are different places. I think during the French Revolution, didn't they have like a 10-day cycle or something like that?
Yeah, I mean, history is full of different calendars, and it's worth pointing out that just because this particular calendar happens to work out in a lot of ways, like it lines up with the moon cycles, it lines up with our bodies to an extent, like there's, reason that we could have come to this independently in so many different ways. We haven't even really settled on it in general, but yeah, the whole notion is pretty ridiculous because the Hebrew God also said that there would be a separation between land and sea and day and night. So does that, because we do in fact have nighttime, does that mean that everything else in the Bible is true also? Like, am I somehow making the same argument for them?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if that's just a bad argument. It's terrible.
Sure. Yeah, it's hard to really parse out when it's just full of holes to begin with.
Look, we might have just lost Le Chef because he shuffled his phone into hang up mode. But I would say call again, Le Chef. But I don't really want to have that conversation. It's just kind of, no thanks. All right, I'd like to talk to Stan in Nevada. Stan says here that you think there's an argument to be made that some Bible verses are supposed to be a joke. You're on the air with Christy
Yes.
and Johnny P.
Hey, Christy, Johnny. Yeah, well, an inside joke. I feel like I can imagine at the Nicene Conference where they're writing the Bible, they go, "Hey, let's put this in. No one will get it," and just kind of roll their heads back and laugh. And for me, that's 1 Corinthians 2:9, which is I have not seen. No, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. So I don't remember. I don't recall that. You're reading it, so please read it. What do you got? What is it?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I don't have it memorized, but it was it's Corinthians 2:9. Eye has not seen nor has ear heard what God has prepared in the kingdom of heaven. And to me, it's okay. Well, I cannot see nor can ear hear. Like by definition, nothing. You can't witness it. So what's the yeah? I mean, you can have
what was
evidence
funny
nothing has been created
1700 years ago. Like that's a challenging thing to wrap your mind around. Like just the culture and everything else of it. It does make me kind of wonder, all right, so maybe this was a joke, maybe it wasn't. What do you do with that information, Stan? Like where do you go with the belief that some of these things were meant to be not taken seriously?
Yeah.
Well, I want to verify my position. I'm not an I'm an atheist. I'm not a theist. So but I was a biblical scholar, growing up. And so what I kind of have found is that whether you want to or not, the argument of whether a God exists is always going to go back to the Bible. And so I can, just kind of pull out of my hat, a couple of instances where it's like, okay, well, if you believe in the literal Bible, this is what is said by, Jesus. This is what is said in Matthew or whatever, like, blessed are the meek for they will inherit the earth. Like, that just means you're going into the ground. Like that's the literal transition of that. Like, or, if you, what was it? John 14:12, I think says, if you believe in Jesus and the things that he's done, that you can achieve the same and greater. So if you can't raise the dead and, make 1,000 fish out of one fish and, feed the masses with, what was it, 2 fish and a loaf of bread, you either don't believe enough or it's not true.
Well, I think, I don't know. I get what you're saying. I don't think that I'm convinced that it was a joke or any of that stuff. I think that they were trying to convey information as they saw it, or trying to make a case for believing in Jesus and friends. So I don't know. But it's an interesting thing to look at. It's an interesting perspective to have.
Sure.
I think that's all I got. I whether what was in the mind of the biblical writers and the framers of the canon,
Curators.
We'll never know, right?
Yeah, we'll never really know. We can make some suppositions, but yeah. Well, thanks for your call, Stan. That's an interesting thing to think about. I'm gonna look for some jokes in there too, if I can find some. You take care, okay?
Nothing kills at a cocktail party better than ancient poetry.
All right. Well, we have a lot of shows here on the Atheist Experience Network, and we're going to show you our promo of things that you missed last week.
My co-host tonight is the only person I know who watches more hockey than porn. Welcome, Puck.
Well, it's the off season right now, so the ratio is a little bit different.
At that point, I realized I had my first best argument against intelligent design in the human body, because once you start talking about men's testicles, people pay attention.
Step in the right direction. We'll step in the right direction. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, well, if I can even get the layman terms for crab and a lobster, let alone anything
Layman
else.
term for crab is a pinchy boy.
Thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not kill, honor thy father and mother, boom, 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 got it all done. And the world is far too complicated for anything like that to ever be possible.
Oh, I know I'm a woman? How do I know I'm a woman? What properties do I have mentally that make me a woman?
A vagina.
Oh, I have a mental vagina? I have a mental vagina, Javier. Can you see my vagina? Do you know if I have a vagina? Stop talking.
I love that clip.
Always a good time. Always a good time.
Hey, if you like what we do here on the Atheist Experience Network and would like to support us and the shows that we do, like the ones you just saw, there's some ways you can support us. You can become a member of the channel for as little as 99 cents a month. Click the join button below this video and it will give you access to special chat emojis. You'll be immune from the messaging limits that non-members have. I'm talking about slow mode, where there's one message every 2 minutes. And as you saw before, Talk Heathen is just one of a bunch of shows. We got Secular Sexuality, Truth Wanted, the Nonprofits, the flagship program of the Atheist Experience Network, and of course, the Atheist Experience, which is just coincidentally named after the network, not the other way around. You can support us on Patreon. That would be here. You could support us on patreon.com/talkheathen2me. And so I want to move on before too long. Gosh, I'm going to do it. All right. We are on the line now with Kevin from New York. Kevin, is this the Kevin from New York that we all know and love?
Yeah, Kevin, I think we're 3 for 3 on contacting on the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah. Hey, hey, thanks for taking my call, you guys.
Always.
The subject that the subject I wanted to bring up on this call had to do with epistemology and the Bible.
Okay.
Before I bring up epistemology, I was definitely sure to look up the definition on what it was so I can discuss it further. And it really had to do with the justification, how someone goes about justifying their belief.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I really thought about it, and in my opinion, that's not really something to pursue when trying to decide if someone is telling the truth or not. Because instead, we should look at it this way. If the person that you're talking to, whether it confirms your worldview or not, or whether or not you have one, if that person isn't encouraging you to do your own legwork, then suspicions should automatically arise. And so focus on that instead of the epistemology of it, because I tend to think that that's how life works, that no good thing comes easy, and so you have to do your own legwork. You know what I mean?
Are you saying that the field and study of how to understand truth is not useful in trying to understand truth? I guess I'm just lost in some of the vocabulary here. I'm not really following you.
Yeah, me neither.
Well, someone can go about and say every day, all day, how they go about justifying their beliefs.
Uh-huh.
But until someone takes that information and does the legwork on it, then it'll remain at a point where it has little or no value.
Trust but verify, get outside
You know what I mean?
verification. If somebody says, this is what I believe and this is why I believe it, you have to follow up by making sure that what they believe and why they believe it lines up with some amount of evidence and it can be confirmed from some other outside source. Is that kind of what we're down to?
Yes.
Okay, so give us an example of how you would apply that approach to some of your claims that you've made in the past.
All right. Well, yes. I'm really going to tell you how and why people, who are theists, are constantly harping on the Bible and Jesus, for example. And in my opinion, it's much deeper than even what they can say. And it has to be known that when I say the Bible, it's the Old Testament, New Testament, and the Apocrypha. Because, as people say that Jesus is the Word of God and the Bible is the Word of God, it has to be either or, logically. Or
that doesn't make any sense, Kevin. I don't know what that means. I don't know what that means. It
You're
has to be
saying
the
logically, and I feel like I understood
yeah.
each individual phrase, but as you glued them together, I couldn't hold the previous one in my mind. This might be a little undercooked, Kevin. Maybe
Could be.
think it through, write it down a little bit, give it another go.
Yeah, if I might, Kevin, going back to our last call, we had talked about how do you determine whether a claim is worth your time? Do you want to talk? Do you want to pick up our last conversation, or do you want to go? Maybe think your new thoughts through, and come back the next week. You don't have to talk to me, by the way. You can talk to any of our marvelous, magnificent hosts. But I rather than try to reconstruct an argument or a position for you on that, either we can pick up where we left off, or we can just send you back to your workshop to work on your thoughts.
Could pick up where we left off.
Around this one for now. It's still under construction, buddy.
Okay. Well, if we want to pick up where we left off, I went through. So as you know, last time on the show that we were on together, we talked about where do you get your claims from? And then we went to sacred-text.com, and that was a fun time. But we kind of skipped over some stuff. We talked about, I asked you, how do you determine whether a claim is worth your time? And then you answered, it has to be tested, it has to be compared to other opinions, and it has to be thoroughly researched. Now, this sounds like it's where you're at right now, and I asked you, how do you determine whether something is tested? And you said you do it yourself, or you do thorough research on the person who tested it. And I asked you what your process was, and you said type in Apocrypha, but an internet search won't do it. Okay, let's talk about testing. Okay, this is where we started. Talk about testing.
Yeah.
What claims have you tested?
Well, a lot of what you can go on. A lot of what you can go on is obviously things that have been talked about ad nauseum already, or say some source of what biblical scholars have had to say about, the canonization and the Apocrypha. But
that doesn't answer my question, though, Kevin. Sorry, that doesn't answer my question.
My testing of all this.
Yeah. Okay. There we go.
My testing of all this is coming from the assumption that some of the things that have already been said were incorrect, and that they failed to convey what was the Word of God.
I'm not hearing any testing, though. Where's the testing? There's an assumption. Cool. But what about testing? What does a test look like when you're doing stuff like that?
The testing is kind of proof in itself, because out of the majority of the information that I've heard out of all the debates is a leaving out of information.
The testing is the proof in itself.
Had you worked at the end of that sentence before you started the beginning? Like I really appreciate you calling, Kevin, but you gotta work some of this out before you get on stage. I really appreciate that you're trying, but you're just not landing today.
Christy, I'm gonna give you a safe word, okay?
Sure.
And if that's all right, and the safe word is pumpkin. All right.
Sure.
If you want to tag out and you just want to move on to another call, Christy, say pumpkin at any point, even if it's in the middle of my sentence.
Okay. All right. So right now we're yellow, but I'll hold off on pulling that ripcord.
Any old time. You're not going to hurt my feelings. Kevin's a sport. Kevin doesn't care. Yeah, I don't know what the heck you're talking about, Kevin. I honestly don't. You've called so many times, and I'm not going to go through all the calls that you've done. Dude, sometimes I've worked in the past.
Can I try to sum it up real quick? I promise I'm.
You can try. Go ahead. Go ahead, Kevin. Maybe I'm just not smart enough, and that's a distinct possibility. Go ahead.
This is why I'm talking about this ad nauseum. It's because there's 3 steps to this whole thing, okay? And the reason why people are harping on Jesus is because the Bible creates the paradigm of his death, burial, and resurrection, and how, in relationship to the world, the Bible was in a dead state. And then it was buried because the early church fathers failed to convey the word of God. And after a long period of time,
Are we on
it would
the
be
Ford now?
returned to us in the form of the Apocrypha.
Yeah, no, yeah, I'm sorry. I got a pumpkin out.
Pumpkin.
Thank you, Kevin. I appreciate you, but you can't give me 3 points, and then if I can't figure out what the 3 are, you got to clean it up for us.
Kevin,
Make some bullet points. Give us another try.
Yeah, Kevin. Yeah, let's break for now. All right. Go back to the drawing board. I'm sorry. Last time we had a fun conversation. This one is just one of those things. I don't get it. I'm gonna let you go. You call back another time with some more focused points. Distill this down. All right.
Give us some notes. We want to hear from you.
And if you want to send us, hey, I'll tell you this. If you want to send us an outline, TV at atheist-community.org, or if you really want to send me an outline, Johnny P at atheist-community.org. I'm happy to text with you.
Johnny and I are not just hosts. We also help produce some of the other folks on the network and some of the shows. We will help you get these talking points like humming along.
Yeah.
And then maybe we can engage with them a little bit more.
Yeah.
Sincerely, use the email. Don't just call in. Do the legwork, as you say, and we'll get this knocked out.
Christy and I can steel man some of your stuff, and maybe we can have a more focused conversation. So how about this? You go your merry way. Happy Sunday. Stay healthy. Do some good out there in the world, and we'll talk to you another time. All right. So that was Kevin. A little disappointing on this call, but I don't want to spend too much time on that. So let's see. I want to talk to Dave in Georgia. Dave, you are on the line with Christy and Johnny. Says here you want to give your perspective of being a former Christian who was into Christian nationalism. And I picked you because that's great. You found your way out. And this is in the news. So tell us how you found your way out, please.
Well, before I get into that, it was good talking to you guys, by the way.
Yeah, good talking to you.
I would basically like to, because you said, you grew up in a Catholic church and you really didn't see some of the things you're seeing now back then.
Yeah.
I became a Christian 31 years ago, and I was baptized. One of the first things I remember my pastor doing was giving me a voter's card. From the very beginning, we would stand on street corners with anti-abortion signs, all through, and of course, we're talking about early days of Rush Limbaugh. We're talking about, trying to, turn the court into the favor to overturn Roe v. Wade.
Very Falwell, the moral authority.
What I was brought into was equally as political as it was religious. And so what we're seeing now, January 6th and whatever, not that everybody that I was a member of would even taken place of, what happened on January 6th. But the thing is that this has just been building and building and building in churches all across this country. Now, how I got out of it, basically, I was a missionary, and eventually through a series of studies on the doctrine of hell, began to question my belief, and eventually I'm no longer a Christian. So.
Okay. That's it. So it was just a self-motivated departure from that worldview?
Well, there was some personal things, one, but then two, I was serving in a country halfway around the world where, just based upon statistics, over 95% of the people were dying and going to a hell that I believed was real. And so as I'm building churches, as I'm meeting people, eventually, do I have a minute? There was a young girl who I led to Christ, and one day she was reading out of the book of Acts where God wanted, Paul wanted to go to Asia, but God wanted him to go to Rome. And the girl in the church read this, and she came and she ran, pedaled her bike to my house crying and saying that why didn't God send Paul to Asia? Because maybe her grandpa would have been saved. And, it's just real true life stories like that begin to shake you in ways that you never realized and make you question in ways you never realized. And of course, I would set out to try to prove the Bible was true, but the more I just began to see the reality of it and on a daily basis, I just began to doubt more and more and eventually jettison the belief.
Yeah. Okay. So what are you seeing people who are talking these talking points for Christian nationalism still amongst your family and friends? You found your way out, but what about other folks around you? What are they saying, and how are you talking to them?
My wife.
Oh,
my wife is still a Christian, fundamentalist Christian. She's she believes that the election was stolen. She believes that the people who invaded the building on January 6th were invited in. She believes this is a whole mass conspiracy, including the COVID shot and everything. And so she's not somebody who's going to go invade the Capitol building, but she's someone who believes in the very same things that they believed.
Yeah. Now you love your wife, and other than that, I'm going to ask: do you have a pretty healthy relationship? You can communicate openly, and you enjoy time together, and all those good things?
We have a healthy relationship, and very few people who were ministers who were fundamentalists are still married to their fundamentalist wife. So we're something that, if you look in the Clergy Project, there's very rare that a fundamentalist minister is still married to his wife when he came out. But for me and her, it's almost like it's an elephant in the corner of the room. Mm-hmm. We both know it's there. Sometimes it comes up, and it's not fun when it happens. No. It's not fun waking up every day with your wife believing you're going to hell. Now, in her mind, she doesn't wake up every day and go, "Oh, my husband's going to hell." She doesn't.
Right.
That's not how she thinks. But ultimately, she believes that I'm going to eventually come back around, believe in Christ again. And, if you think about it, I can no longer, she no longer has the Christian husband that she married. And so there's a certain part of intimacy that dies. And then I can't be my authentic self with her because my authentic self offends her. And so it's up to this point, we've been married 23 years. I love her more than I love myself. I think that's winning out, but it's hard.
Yeah, and it's sincerely worth asking the question, just who is being served by this relationship and how well are you being served? I don't want to sound at all as if you don't have permission to be in this relationship. And I think a lot of people might take it there, that might, kind of look down their nose at you and say that it's morally wrong or whatever else. And, it may be depending on the particulars of what you are normalizing or participating in. But ultimately, I think that you have every right to be in this relationship. And I'm glad to hear that it's full of love and that there's value in it. But it does sound very challenging, and it might be worth asking the question, at least, of is this relationship in anybody's best interest?
Yes, and there's times that I just wish I could just, let her marry a Christian husband, and for me to marry someone closer, more beliefs than I would, and it would just seem to be so much easier. I just don't think either of us are prepared to do that.
Sure. Well, I mean, the only way to be prepared is to prepare. That doesn't mean that you need to actively start plotting to pull out of this relationship. But, everybody who's ever been prepared started out unprepared and then took some steps. And I'm not pushing you to take any particular steps, but this does sounds pretty overwhelming. And you've just got the one life to live. I hope that you live yours with as much joy and love and passion and everything else as you possibly can. And when we are in these types of situations, there's a sense of obligation. There's a sense that we're not really allowed to be curious or to even consider alternatives. And so, without wanting to be a stranger on the internet trying to tell you about your marriage, and I really apologize if I come across that way, I guess I would just like to invite a little bit of curiosity.
Yeah, and then Dave, it sounds like you're struggling with like what we all struggle with as we grow over time. People in relationships change. They go in they grow together, but sometimes they grow apart. I'm not saying that you're growing apart, but you are reaching a point where in one aspect of life you are growing apart from your wife. And if you're leaving her to that world, that QAnon world, that storm the Capitol world, that all that stuff, then you're not engaging, and you don't have to have complete overlap with a partner. I don't think that's probably healthy either. But
Sure.
that sounds like it's a major portion of her worldview, of what she thinks the world is like, of what she thinks or who she thinks you are like. And although it can be difficult to have those conversations, it may benefit you in the long run, either to strengthen your relationship, to change the nature of your relationship, or to develop away from this relationship, whatever it might be. Um, do you know what news sources she's consuming, Dave? Like, where is she getting her info?
Oh yeah, she's American News One. She's what the Breitbart. She reads all the time.
Yep.
And so she's getting her news from the sources you would expect.
Yeah. Do you ever talk about? Sometimes you can't have a direct conversation about things like that, but you can have a collateral. You can collaterally attack those topics by approaching it from the side, talking about the reliability of that. Maybe you have.
Well, we've had those in the past, and they've been just totally unfruitful. And so once again, that's part of the elephant in the corner of the room.
Right. That's a tricky position, right? I mean, and does she ever come out and say, honey, you're going to be burning in hell? And then do you ever say, how do you feel about that? What do you want to do about that? Am I wrong? But I mean, what are the consequences to those thoughts? I mean, I know you shy away from it and it gets ugly, and then you go about your regular life. You go shopping, you go do things, and you have friends and family in common and love. Obviously, there's love there. Otherwise, you wouldn't persist in this relationship. But what about following the trail? Can you maintain? Does it get emotional? Does it get hyper animated? And do you have shouting matches, or is it more conversational and cool headed? What are those conversations like? And are you afraid of following that path? See where the rabbit trail goes to. Are you afraid of that, or have you done it?
Well, the only time that we generally argue, and I'm not talking about just stone cold drunk, but I'm talking about having a glass of wine or two.
Sure.
And that comes out, and but that doesn't happen all the time. But for the most part, like I said, she keeps what she believes to herself. I keep what I believe to myself.
Yeah.
On one hand, I want to write a book, and I'm in the process, but I don't want her looking over my shoulder and what are you writing?
Yeah. Right. Exactly.
It's just I never thought I'd be in this position, but
I hear that.
We get this call fairly often about partners who've left religions unevenly. And I guess this is your path to navigate. Marriage counseling may be a good idea. Individual counseling may be a good idea. If you want to explore that at some point.
Well, I've tried. I've tried to, because I had a counselor through the therapy project, but she wants a Christian counselor, and so she went and saw the guy from the secular therapy project, but She just told him the situation, and she didn't want to see him again because he didn't believe in Jesus. And so, she'd be afraid that he would try to pull the wisdom of man over her head, And so, I really don't want to go see a Christian therapist.
Y'all are pulling
I
in
would.
very different directions.
Yeah.
So right now there's not a whole lot of movement, and everybody feels a little bit stuck. And I want to say that sucks, and I really do sincerely feel for you. At the same time, I want to just emphasize that that's your right. There's no right way or wrong way to have a marriage. There are some ways that are more enjoyable than others, for sure. But ultimately, if this relationship is working for you, then it's working for you. I would just continue to encourage you to ask yourself, is this working for me?
Right. And Dave, I think that's all we got for you today. I encourage you to keep up, have those difficult conversations, keep examining where you're at. You don't have to stay in. You don't have to leave. You don't have to go to a Christian counselor. You don't have to make her go to a non-Christian counselor. There's a lot of options available to you, and only you and your wife are going to be the ones that are going to be able to make that decisions for yourself. So, best of luck to you. I wish you success in whatever direction you go.
Thanks, gentlemen.
Take care.
Take care. Good luck.
All right. Well, you know what? Maybe you don't know this, Christy. Maybe you don't know this. Maybe there are folks out there in the viewing audience, those heathens out there who watch our show, who want to listen to our show. Perhaps they don't want to see us. Perhaps they're tired of seeing us.
Understandable. Yeah, respectable.
Yes. Well, you can do that very thing. You can go to the tiny.cc/AEN podcasts, where you can listen to the latest shows of the Atheist Experience, this show, Talk Heathen, Truth Wanted, your show, Secular Sexuality, and of course,
Thursday nights at 7.
Thursday nights at 7, and up next, the flagship show of the ACA, The Nonprofits. It's all on one channel. You can join the conversation. You don't just have to listen. You can actually jibber jabber with the rest of us on our fan-run Facebook pages, run by fans, for fans. For the Atheist Experience, we have, well, forget about that. For Talk Heathen, we have one at http://colon/tiny.cc/FBTHG, and you can tune in there and have conversations there. But that's not the only place you can go, Christy. I don't know if you know this, but
there's more.
There's more. You can get merchandise. Sometimes you want to wear something. Sometimes you want to drink out of a vessel of some kind. Well, you can do that. Except you can't do it for Talk Heathen, not quite yet. You can get merchandise over at tiny.cc/merchaca, t-shirts, hoodies, coffee mugs, stickers, and a whole lot more. Right below the chat, you'll notice there's a donate now box, and we do donations here. And you can donate, and 100% of the proceeds will come to the atheist community of Austin. None of it will go to YouTube. They don't take a cut. And that's a really great way to support us.
Yeah, and I want to take a quick moment to say that those donations and the viewers of Talk Heathen and the Atheist Experience in large part help to keep things like Secular Sexuality out on the airwaves so that information is available to folks. And so I want to say a sincere thank you to the Talk Heathen audience for helping to support that show and to make sure that the great sexual education and conversations around white nationalism and gender and these things are continuing to happen. And if I may, Johnny, to take a moment and thank some of the Talk Heathen patrons that are helping to keep all of this going.
I'd like you to.
Yeah, so let's thank all of our Talk Heathen patrons, but in particular, I want to call out our top 5. Coming in this week at number 5, we have Paul Lee. Number 4 is Balaam's Donkey. Number 3 is Dingleberry Jackson. In the number 2 spot, we have CJ Dennis. And the number 1 patron this week is Eric Tweet. Of course, I want to quickly mention our honorable mention at the great North American Dingaloo in spot number 6. thank y'all so much for continuing to support the show with an ongoing donation. And I would encourage everybody to check out patreon.com/Talk Heathen to me.
Please do. Please do. All right. What say you? We take Gohan from Texas.
Yeah, let's hear it.
Gohan, you have the violinist argument for abortion on the mind. And Christy and I,
yes, sir.
We want to mind meld with you. So tell us your thoughts. Share your thoughts, friend.
Sure. And Mr. Angel, I just want to say I tried speaking to you another time. I was driving though, and the audio was pretty bad. I just want to say you are a pretty nice guy. Chrissy, I haven't really had a chance to meet you yet, so nice talking to you.
Hey, glad to hear from you. Tell me about the violinist argument for abortion. That is not a framework that I'm aware of.
Sure. I'm going to try my best to steelman the violinist argument.
Okay.
It goes something like a secret society who loves violinists. I don't really know why. I don't have anything against violinists, but they love violinists. They know their favorite violinist is sick, and the only way to keep him alive is to kidnap you and strap you to him to keep him alive. You end up in the hospital. You aren't really sure what's going on. The doctor kind of tells you that same stuff and says, all right, you are left with a choice. You can either unstrap yourself and go free, knowing that the violinist will probably die, or you can stay connected and be life support for the violinist for 9 months. So that's pretty much the violinist argument. I hope I kind of did a good job of steelmanning it.
Sure. Okay. And so what do you have to say about that? I think a lot of our viewers are familiar with the violinist argument. I don't think the violin part of it's important. It could be any old person. But yes, you find yourself connected to a violinist. You are medically connected to a violinist or someone who is dependent upon your body for their existence. They will likely die or definitely will die if you wish. And all you have to do is stay medically connected to them for 9 months. And I guess the question is it morally wrong for you to disconnect? Or does the violinist have a right to remain connected to you? What's the point about it? Because I know the argument. You know, I've heard it before.
Yes. So
yeah.
The point is pretty much is trying to establish a bodily autonomy argument, saying that you have the right through bodily autonomy to not stay connected to the violinist, even if it is the only thing that is keeping him alive. I have
possibly a differentiation to make here between whether or not you have the moral right to disconnect versus do we as a society have the right to criminalize disconnecting and to make this a legal consideration.
Yeah, and I'm not too interested in the legal argument. I'm interested in the morality argument.
Oh, I think you should be interested in the legal argument because we live in a world that is governed by laws. And so the argument comes down to, are you consenting to letting the government tell you exactly when and how you can use your body? Because personally, I'm not an anti-government dude or anything like that. But I don't want the government up in my business. Not like that. And I don't even have a womb.
Yeah. Well, and there's, precedent here. And I just want to say that there are other ways that we understand that bodily autonomy outside of the conversation around abortion. You know, I have a grandfather who would have died, who would have been buried and gone 14 years ago if he hadn't received a heart transplant. And yet we do not take unwilling organ donations from corpses. And so if we are following this violinist logic, if we're using that same metaphor, in a lot of ways, there are more rights being afforded to a corpse than to a modern human being who would be gestating a fetus. And that, to me, is incredibly problematic.
And I can get into some of those arguments, but my real purpose of calling was to introduce the reverse violinist argument and see what your all's response is to that.
Fair.
All right. That's interesting. Go for it.
So I would like to take credit for this, but I cannot. First time I heard it was from a pro-life apologist named Trent Horn, but it goes pretty much like this. You decide to not stay connected, and you get up. All of a sudden, the doctors come in, and they're yelling at you because they forgot to tell you that if you do get up and disconnect yourself, you are now putting your own life at risk. And next thing you know, you drop to the floor and you're unconscious. It turns out that in order for you to stay alive, you also have to be hooked up to the violinist. And now we find out 9 months later, violinist is fully healed, but you still need to stay connected to him. And even though he kind of puts you in the situation to be dependent upon you, is it now okay for the violinist to disconnect from you, which would kill you?
I think you can say if the violinist engineered a circumstance creating a dependency, that there is now a obligation to satisfy that dependency. I mean, does that feel fair, Johnny?
Yeah, this is where we're getting into you had sex, therefore you somehow consented to the consequences of all of what can happen from sex.
Well, let's say that's not true. Let's say the violinist didn't know that would happen. Let's say they didn't know you would be dependent upon him. They just thought it was a great way for him to live, but he didn't know you would be dependent upon him. Just like if you have sex, you don't know if you're going to get pregnant and have somebody dependent upon you. So let's say the violinist didn't even know.
Maybe I'm a little lost, but how about this? And you can say this is a cop-out, but when we incarcerate someone, let's say, into a prison or a jail or something like that, or into an asylum of some kind, a mental health facility, we become, when we take that intentional action to incarcerate someone, we have an obligation that if they're going to remain in jail, in prison, in a hospital of some kind, we now take on a responsibility of maintaining that person by certain standards. Okay,
I'm agreeable to that part.
Right, and that is the law. Okay, and anytime there's a violation of that, then that person, the incarcerated individual, has the right to bring a conditions of confinement lawsuit against the governmental entity that has incarcerated them. Okay. I don't know what happens. I would assume that if a person were to, sometimes stores or other businesses have the right to stop someone, detain people for the purposes of bringing a law enforcement in there. In those instances, does that mean that the person who has detained the individual has a responsibility of maintaining certain quality of life while they're in detainment? I don't know. I don't know what the answer is for that. So if the violinist has captured you, I would think in some way that violinist would be under some kind of obligation to not detach because they would be killing you as a result. I don't know. This is kind of speculative, and I'm just kind of following the paths around the maze. I'm not entirely sure.
No,
it does feel increasingly divorced. Like the metaphor seems further and further away from the thing that we're trying to understand. Like I appreciate that we can explore abortion through these thought experiments.
Yeah.
But I don't really see how your reverse violinist coincides with the real world or with conception or some of these other corollaries.
Yeah, I think I know where you're going with it. Gohan, hold on. I think I kind of understand. I guess I need to think about it for a while. I'll be honest. But to me, it really comes down to can the government, should the government be able to tell people you have to house a cluster of cells that will, if everything goes according to the usual, will eventually develop into a viable fetus and eventually a live birth. And I'm not comfortable allowing the government to make that determination. I just don't. It is legal. It's like they say everything is politics. Everything is politics. And so much like, and I talked about this the other day on Matt's show, if your 1-year-old needs a kidney transplant from you, and you're the only donor in any realistic sense to that child, the government does not choose and should not choose to force the parent to give a kidney to that child. We don't expect that. You can live without a kidney, and is supposing that the child will die without the kidney. The government doesn't step in on behalf of the 1-year-old and say, parent, we're going to sedate you. We're going to take you into a hospital or something like that. We're going to sedate you. We're going to remove your kidney, and we're going to give that kidney to your child because of reasons, okay? Because we think that it benefits that child. And there's nothing you can say or do about it. We don't do that. But if you rewind the clock by 18 months, there are plenty of people who are fine with saying to a parent, we are going to force you to keep your uterus in a certain state for the rest of the duration of this pregnancy. And there's nothing you can do or say to change that fact. And I'm just not, I just think that's wrong. I do. It's an unfortunate situation well, go ahead.
I was just going to say, if I could get a quick second to respond, there is a lot, so I'll just try to respond kind of from what I remember. But no, I 100% understand that this may be the first time you've heard that argument. I do not expect a yes or no answer, just something to think about. And I think that's fair. You don't have to give an answer. Secondly, I'm fine moving on from that analogy to just talking more about generally the difference between abortion and giving away an organ. If we have time, I can get into that. If not, I understand.
Okay, let's go into it a little bit. We only have, I think, 4 minutes left in the regularly scheduled show. But yeah, give us something else to think about. I do appreciate this tone and just the general attitude of a conversation. So many people who call the show are picking a fight, but you just want to have a conversation, and that's what we're here about on Talk Heathen.
Well, like I said, you're one of the nicest guys I've heard on TV, so yeah, no problem. But what I was saying for the difference between abortion and forced organ donation, there is a pretty good difference. I think you are a lawyer, is that right, Mr. Angel?
Allegedly, yes.
Okay, so you could probably correct me if I'm wrong, but if you do not give your kidney to or liver to your kid, or let's just go, something like that, they would not die from you keeping your organs. They would die from kidney failure or liver failure or something like that.
Right.
If you decide to have an abortion, they are directly dying from that abortion. It's not anything that's wrong with them. It's the fact that you are killing them. With an abortion, there's 100%, if it's successful, 100% chance of death. If you do not give a kidney, there's still a small chance of the kid living after that. very.
But
not
I
very
don't
high,
accept
but
the
they're very
use
small.
of the word them or kid or some of these things, because when we are
Well,
talking about an
that's the
abortion,
person.
it's relevant. What are we talking about? You know,
I'm
the
sorry.
question,
That's
the
a
philosophical question
personhood
of whether
argument.
or not a zygote is a person is one that we can discuss a little bit. And where do we draw that line, and what is a acceptable term, and these
Sure.
different things? But it's really,
I will
really
agree with.
significant that we draw that line somewhere.
Yeah, and
And I
Christy,
would
good
say
point.
that's
And
the
Gohan, I
personhood
think I
argument.
know where you're going with that. I think for me, it's we look at the use of the kidney versus the use of the womb and the entire body system of the mother. We're talking about use,
I'm not.
forcing.
I'm not
Yeah.
going there. I'm sorry. I'm not trying to be rude. I'm just letting you know I'm not going in that direction. I'm just going for the cause of death. The cause of death is not a failure of an organ donation. The cause of death is a failure of an organ. The cause of death in abortion is the abortion. So it's much more direct, and that's why there's a huge difference.
A huge difference or not, we're talking about mandating the use of an organ. That's what it comes down to.
No,
You can focus on that aspect of it, Gohan. I get it. I know why you do. I get it. But the fact of the matter is, it comes down to surrendering your individual right to use your body as you see fit, and it becomes uh, difficult to talk about when you do talk about things like that. You are ending a life,
Sure.
right?
Sure.
Well, how would you remove the fetus from the womb outside of an abortion procedure?
If
You can't teleport
I'm
them.
probably going to make a lot of pro-lifers mad if I say this, but I would say it's okay to remove the fetus if you can manage not to kill it. But if it dies on its own, then the doctor is morally responsible for that death, because he made the decision to place a living organism from a habitable environment to a non-habitable environment. So if the doctor is okay with that, then I think it should be legal for the mom, but then the doctor would have to be morally responsible for moving a living organism from a habitable environment to non-habitable.
All right, go ahead, and I appreciate that position. Real quick, now that you've said that, now we've got two other issues here. On the one hand, you've got Christie's point: is that when do these rights attach to the egg, the fertilized egg, the zygote, the ootid, the fetus, the almost.
I say death, if that makes it easy. Zygote, embryo, fetus, death.
Death?
ZEF stands for zygote, embryo, and fetus.
So the rights attach.
Yeah.
When do the rights attach, in your view? I want to know.
Sure. And I think this is a personhood question, not a bodily autonomy question, but I will say rights attach to all human organisms. So once a zygote is formed, after fertilization, it is scientifically a human organism. It's not an organ, it's not tissue, it's a human organism. So I think all human organisms have the same rights.
So as soon as the egg is fertilized, in your view, it's a human organism that gets full human rights under the law.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And then once that pregnancy comes to term and it's born, it loses one of its rights. The right to dictate the right to dictate the use of the parent's body.
I'm a parent of a young 5-month-old. I still have to. I'm forced by the government to use my body in ways I may not want to at 3 a.m. in the morning to care for the baby. So that right does not go away.
I get you.
That right is afforded to all children.
But you do. You're the person who bore your child, in your view, had an obligation to maintain your child's continued existence within your is it your partner, but then
Sorry,
now
my kid is adopted.
Okay. Okay. But at no point does your already born child have a right to any of your organs, right?
I would say, like, if you consider my skin to be an organ, if that's all I have to keep it warm, it has every right to my skin to keep it warm.
I think that's and I do appreciate your tone, Gohan, but I think that's getting cute.
Sure.
And I'm not saying you're being disingenuous or anything like that, but that's being cute. I think the other side of it is, okay, now that I may have lost my train of thought, but I guess now we're looking at a mechanism. Just to talk about your following your thought. It's fine for the mother or the childbearing parent to determine an end to pregnancy. However, it is it is considered a crime on the part of the doctor to participate that in any way. I think you said something along those lines. Correct me if I'm wrong. So the parent. What's that?
I would say pretty close. I would say if the doctor can end the pregnancy in a way that does not kill the fetus, then I'm fine with that. Even if it means fetus is not naturally born, but forced out by a doctor at 26 weeks, and fetus can still live. I'm fine with that. I know, again, most pro-life people say, no, the fetus has to stay inside 9 months until it's naturally born. I don't 100% agree with that.
Okay, so what about the childbearing parent? What about them and do they have a right to? They only have a right to remove the fetus if that fetus will live, in your view. Is that right?
Yes, that goes for both the birth parents and the doctor.
Okay. Well, I think I understand the position there. I still don't agree with it because I still think you've run into the problem, and I see why you're saying, yeah. And this is the conversations that I have typically with my religious friends, my conscientious, compassionate, humanist religious friends. They take this tone. It's not you're all fire breathing demons who would want to kill a baby. It's more, I recognize this, I recognize that. I just think that this is more important than that, and this is the other thing. I get it. I just don't. It comes back down to, I do not want the government telling me how I can use my body. Now, a lot of people out there are like, well, they're telling you how to use your body when it comes to masks, right? And I think that's a little bit different. No, I didn't think you were. I didn't think you were.
Okay.
I didn't think
I
you
was
were.
going to say it kind of does already, though, with other examples. The government tells me I'm not allowed to kill Bob down the street or my daughter in my house. I'm also not allowed to kill a daughter inside my wife's room or somebody else's room. So, like, that's the logical idea. But I do understand why you're saying the government shouldn't tell me what to do with my body. I just only think that applies if you're not killing another human being.
I get it.
It's what not to do with your body up until the point that what you're doing impacts somebody else's body, right? Like, I have the right to do whatever I want, except if I kill somebody, that's violating their right to not be killed. And that, to me, again, I know that we are not looking at, you want to focus on the bodily autonomy argument, but I can't help but feel like it's incredibly relevant, nevertheless, to recognize that the right to that connection does not apply when we're talking about a clump of cells. And that's a
I
piece
agree.
of this that we have skipped over pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Yes,
And
we did. The bodily autonomy argument assumes personhood, so I 100% agree. We did skip that argument to get to the personhood argument. The bodily autonomy argument. I'm happy having the personhood discussion, but I almost 100% sure we don't have time for that.
We don't.
Yeah, next
We
show
don't.
for sure.
Go ahead. I do like it when you call. I do like it when you call when I can hear you and you're not driving.
Yeah,
And there's a good connection. Let's take a break let's take a break here. All right. We've got to end the show, but I know you're going to call back. I want you to call back, and I want this conversation to continue because these are the issues that thoughtful people are debating. Okay, that you will have with people of good conscience, and so it sounds like you are one of those folks. I know we try to be as well, And so let's
You
break
guys are
now.
very nice.
Oh, I lost you there. What was that?
No, I was saying you guys are very nice and polite, and it's easy to have good conversations with people like y'all. So
Yeah, well, and let me invite you to consider calling into the Atheist Experience a little bit later today when Shannon and Jenna will be on the show, and you can actually hear from two women about this issue
Right.
and have that opportunity to explore this, not just with violins and thought experiments, but to actually talk a little bit more personally about some of the meaningful components of this than the three of us guys just sort of rambling on about what we think our rights ought to be.
Yeah. Well, go ahead. We're going to let you go with that. Go ahead.
I appreciate the offer. Thank you. But I don't think sex has anything to do with the conversation. But I do appreciate the offer. And I'm sorry I took up so much time, you guys.
No, it was a pleasant conversation. Go ahead. It was great talking with you. We're going to let you go now. And that is the end of the show. How did you feel about today's show, Christy? We didn't have any drama. We didn't have any lightning bolts coming across the screen. We didn't have any conversions. Did you have a good time?
Had a good time. Glad to be here. Yeah, you got to show up and do it. I am still waiting for that magical call that changes everything when we find out about a research journal or something else that can evidence a dog coming back to life or some of these other ideas.
Yeah.
But I'm happy to stay patient.
Well, I'll tell you what. Let's head on out. Hey, everyone! Thanks for tuning into the show. We send a shout out always to the essential workers out there, the folks that are doing what needs to be done to keep everything running. It might seem like you can just go back to normal, people. It might seem like all you got to do is have your vaccine and do your business, do your issues. But the truth is, there are variants out there. We need to be aware of it. If you travel, there's a lot more travel these days. Make sure you go get tested after you travel. Okay. I know you have to go to the grocery store. You got to go the places you have to go to, but please get regular testing. Make sure you're wearing your mask. It's not hard to do it because those essential workers out there, they're there. They're on the front lines, and there are variants, and they will continue until we get this thing under control. I'm not saying you got to hide in your basement with the boy in the plastic bubble, but let's just all continue to do what we need to do to make sure that this thing ends within our lifetimes, which hopefully will be very long. I want to go out there to the crew. I want to see the crew in action right now, and I know the folks at home do too. Look at all these fabulous people waving at us, and there's dogs, and there's cats, and there's Greg who's watching over us all. Thank you so much. Hey, for those of you who do not believe in faith healers healing dogs that are dying, this is thank you for the love rings too, by the way. This is your place. We're here for you. We want to have conversations with you. We appreciate you. We like to hear the challenges that you're facing. Okay, call in, share it with us, give us some ideas, give us books to read, give us hope that it's not all conflict. Sometimes there's a way through all this. But for those of you who do believe in faith healing dog pastors, we don't hate you.
We're just not convinced.
See you next time. We want the truth, so watch Truth Wanted live Fridays at 7 p.m. Central. Visit tiny.cc/YTTW and call into the show at 512-991-9242 or connect to the show online at tiny.cc/calltw.